Hello and welcome to the Fantasy Life Show. I'm your host, Ian Hartitz. It is a great day to be great. It's a great day to break down our 10 biggest takeaways from all the preseason action that's unfolded over the past few weeks. Because everyone, we are a mere 10 days away from Cowboys-Eagles on Thursday Night Football. I, for one, cannot wait. But that said, still have some time to get those last fantasy drafts in, adjust the ranks one more time. And again, today's goal is to accomplish just that. Of course, I cannot do so alone. Accordingly, I am joined by the one, the only, Kendall Valenzuela. K-Dog's in the house.
What's up? I show up to work. Dwain McFarland, that is a specific shot on you. I show up to work today. You know, my Wi-Fi is doing great. Lights are on. I'm ready to go. I'm just saying, we're here. I'll be the fantasy analyst that we need today. How you doing, Ian? I'm excited to be here.
Called in the righty. Shout out K-Dog on a short notice stepping in here. Dwayne's Wi-Fi is apparently on the fritz. You know, his computer is Wi-Fi.
Got a beer. He's at the pool. He's got a beer. What are we doing? Like, come on. Just, Dwain, FaceTime us right now and show us where you are. That's what I want during this show. I'm kidding.
I want to see him holding up a copy of today's paper. You know, let's really get down to it at this point. But honestly, if I had to guess, Kendall, I think Dwayne's probably just mourning the fact that Terry McLaurin got paid. All these touchdown regression nerds out there that said, oh my goodness, how could you pay someone that scores so many touchdowns, Kendall? Well, the Commanders did, so that was good to see. Meanwhile, though, Jacoby Myers, not happy. He wants a new contract or a trade. I will say this, Kendall, I mean, if you're a wide receiver at this point, why not just request a trade? It always seems to work out for him.
I'm doing it for us right now. I sent in the note before this show and just said, we're not showing up tomorrow if we don't get it. So it's like weird though. The Jacoby Myers one, I guess we heard rumblings a little bit that he was unhappy with his contract, but you know, I just didn't think that anything would come of that, right? Because you're like, oh, okay, it's Jacoby Myers. Like he should be pretty happy. He's the wide receiver one on that team. But yeah, that one's interesting where I'm curious where that's going to go because requesting a trade, what'd you say? We're 10 days away from Thursday Night Football. So like requesting a trade 10 days before, hopefully they can get some kind of contract situation going because like he's still like a good receiver for us in fantasy football. Like we've still been drafting him. He's not someone, he's almost like Tyler Lockett-esque to me where people kind of just like overlook him and they're like, oh, okay, Jacoby Myers, whatever. But the way that he gives you fantasy points, especially in PPR, like it's one of those guys where you don't want to sleep on him too much because he is able to give you some fantasy value based on where he's going. But I can't see a situation where they say, yeah, that's fine, let's trade him. But weirder things have happened, I guess, Ian. I don't know.
I love the Tyler Lockett comp because, again, Jacoby back-to-back years finished as a low-end wide receiver 2. What do we do the next season? Still continue to rank him as a wide receiver 3, wide receiver 4. Not K-Dog and I, of course. We are always on the Jacoby Myers train. But with all that said, Kendall, again, a lot of wide receiver news flying around. We got cut day coming up here, so a lot of stuff going with that. The biggest news, though, is going to be the subject of our DraftKings opening lines, a Joe Mixon injury update. It has been nearly impossible to get a word on Joe Mixon dealing with his foot and ankle injury out of the Texans beat, or of course the coaching staff throughout the better part of the last month. That said, we finally did get some news, Kendall, and it is not good. Mixon will be missing at least the first 4 games of the season while he is on the reserve/non-football injury list. So again, sure seems like he just suffered some sort of re-aggravation throughout the summer with this foot ankle problem. We did get an update that he is still rehabbing. There's no structural damage, but he went to go get shots. Not ideal, Kendall. And again, a good reminder that there's a difference between believing a player is injury prone or actively injured. Mixon certainly falls into the latter camp. So yeah, in terms of where Mixon goes in drafts right now, I mean, he should be going a heck of a lot lower with ADP. I am pretty much happy to let someone else in my drafts take him at this point. Again, seems like basically a just handcuff option at best at this point. So Kendall, thoughts on the situation and kind of who is maybe the Texans RB that you are now looking to target?
Yeah, this sucks. I mean, it's one of those things where I wasn't drafting much of Joe Mixon this season anyway. He was pretty good last season. You know, he had a really tough fantasy end of schedule. So you kind of knew in the fantasy playoffs that he probably wasn't going to give you that much. But for what it's worth, you know, him as one of my running backs last season, you were pretty happy as a manager with it. I've just, to be totally honest, Ian, I looked at my exposure before coming on this show to make sure that I am saying what is in line with my thoughts. I've stayed away from this backfield. And listen, I love Nick Chubb. I really hope that I am wrong on Nick Chubb, because that means, Ian, we get the Nick Chubb of old that we haven't seen in a really long time. But it just doesn't feel like he's going to be this alpha running back that you're going to want. If the price is right, sure. I can't, stray anyone away if the price is right and you're getting him in these later rounds. But for me, Nick Chubb has not been someone that I've said, yeah, you know what? He recorded career lows in yards per attempt last season and percentage of carries that gained 10 plus yards. Like, that's my guy. I definitely want to go get him. Again, what do you always say? You say, don't hate the player, hate the ADP. So at some point, he got a little bit too expensive for me. I know we can talk about Woody Marks here and what our expectations are for him. But again, I never want to get too enamored with some of these rookies that come in and we just say, here's a shiny new toy. Hopefully they can take him and do everything that they need. I think this to me just showed that CJ Stroud, for what it's worth, I think he's going to be just passing a lot more, and hopefully his receivers stay a lot healthier than they did last season. So I'm expecting a bounce back more from CJ Stroud than anything else, because Ian, what are they going to do? Where are they going to go? I'm curious what you think here, but for me, I have 0% exposure to Nick Chubb, and I think it's probably going to stay that way for the next week and a half.
I'm with you. Again, we're going to see him likely start to rise into that low-end RB3 range, and I'm good there, okay? That's kind of the last time you have to actually get some of these good wide receivers, not even venture to go ahead and get my onesie quarterback or tight end I'm waiting on instead of Nick Chubb, who is probably the starter at this point. That said, guys, again, I know we saw, I think it was the week 2 preseason usage, but Dameon Pierce still wasn't quite in the picture back then. He is improving in health, though, in his own right. We got another injury going on there, and we are tentatively expecting them to kind of split up these first-team reps between Nick Chubb and Dameon Pierce. So you brought up the 3.3 yards per carry from Nick Chubb last season, Kendall. And what bothers me about it, too, is the fact that it wasn't like everyone in this Cleveland Browns backfield was just struggle busing, okay? That's kind of what happened in Chicago, for example. It's why I can take, DeAndre Swift's lack of efficiency with a little bit grain of salt. I don't love the fact that Jerome Ford in that same offense was averaging 5.4 yards per carry. That Pierre Strong was at 4.2 yards per carry, and it was Nick Chubb and then Deontay Foreman, who, yes, I think we can all also agree is very washed, all the way down there at 3.3. So I get it, not the best offense in its own right, and maybe Nick Chubb, an extra year removed from that knee injury, is going to be better. But Kendall, we also got to remember how Nick Chubb ended last season. He broke his foot. So, man, excuse me for thinking that maybe the best days in Chubb's career are in the rear view mirror. Personally, I think Woody Marks is fine later rounds. You do have a situation where he's this dual threat, explosive pass catching talent. They picked him on day 3 for a reason. And we've seen a lot of hype for guys like Jarquez Hunter and, again, someone's Cam Scatterbo, guys that weren't picked that too differently than Woody Marks in the first place. I tend to think, though, Kendall, that Dameon Pierce, if you want to go in the last few rounds, is maybe the guy I'm putting more of a chip on. So, again, we see how these things can change quickly. I'm not trying to chase Dameon Pierce up the draft boards, but hey, Kendall, we've been in this business long enough, man. That 2022 Dameon Pierce rookie season, hell of a drug.
People forget about that too, by the way. When you brought him up in one of the chats, I was like, oh, shoot, I forgot about that. But it is one of those things where I tend to do this as well. The rookie hype gets a little bit out of control. And you say, here's this shiny new toy. He's obviously, because of where they drafted him, even if it's a later draft pick, they have plans for him. And I do not disagree with that when it comes to Woody Marks. But Woody Marks now, with this news, like, we can't just expect all of a sudden, if Nick Chubb were to go down, he gets a full workload. So I 100% agree with you on Pierce as well. It's just one of those things things where if you want these are going to be late round dart throws anyway. Heck, if you've already drafted, probably both of these guys are on your waivers, depending on if you're not in a sicko league that's, 20 rounds like some of us do here. But it's just one of those things where I'll probably take shots on both, to be totally honest, and see which one sticks. But if you want someone that could potentially have value right away, or at least climb up the board a little bit faster, the depth chart, I should say, during the season, yeah, I would probably have to go with Pierce on that one.
And I think the important thing to remember about this whole situation is in a similar conversation we had about Quinshot Judkins and the Browns. Mm-hmm. This isn't a great offensive environment that we want a piece of, Kendall, okay? This is the league's reigning 19th ranked scoring offense. PFF and ETRs, Brandon Thorne alike, ranked this revamped Texans offensive line still is the single worst unit in the league. I mean, it is a situation we're just putting so much hope and faith in Stroud and new offensive coordinator Nick Caley rebounding. I did read an interesting article from Stephen Ruiz over at The Ringer, one of my favorite, professionals in our lovely sports journalist business. He actually got a chance to talk to, Stroud and Caley and kind of the Texans camp as a whole. And basically the big change, Kendall, is apparently Stroud for the first time in his young career is going to have more freedom at the line of scrimmage. He's going to be able to audible more often, which again, maybe that goes great, but we're just taking a really big leap of faith in assuming this Texans offense is going to be good when, again, everything we've kind of seen from a Jim's and Joe's perspective maybe doesn't quite give us that much confidence. So for me, it's Nico Collins, and that kind of is about it in terms of what I'm expecting fireworks from in Houston. So again, guys, unfortunate. And I think a good reminder that you can never, ever have your fantasy football draft until 5 minutes before kickoff in week 1. But guys, again, that has been the update on the Joe Mixon situation. This has been our DraftKings opening lines. College football fans, it is almost time to fire up the grill, rep your colors, and get loud because Saturdays are about to get electric. And I've teamed up with DraftKings Sportsbook to get you in on the game with an incredible offer. Right now, new customers who bet just $5 will get $200 instantly in bonus bets. That's right, new customers bet $5, get $200 in bonus bets. Just download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and sign up using my promo code FANTASYLIFE. The crown is yours. The next great touchdown is coming. You can bet on it. Stay locked in all season long and use your bonus bets on same game parlays for a shot at an even bigger payout. Stack bets from one matchup and watch the drama unfold. And hey, if you love the thrill of game day momentum shifts, try live betting on in-progress games. DraftKings makes every snap count. And hey, if sports betting isn't live in your state yet, no worries. You can still join in on all the fun with DraftKings Daily Fantasy Sports and play for real cash prizes. So here's your play. Download DraftKings Sportsbook, sign up with promo code FANTASYLIFE, and bet just $5 to get $200 in bonus bets instantly. That's promo code FANTASYLIFE only at DraftKings Sportsbook. Let's make this college football season one to remember. The top 10 preseason takeaways, and I must remind you all that while we do care about players performing good or bad in the preseason, it really is the usage that matters most. So I do invite you to go check out Dwain McFarland's very free article on fantasylife.com where he went through every single game from week 3 and again gave you all those helpful usage nuggets. Because, Kendall, it actually was a situation where we saw a lot more teams using week 3 of the preseason as a bit of a dress rehearsal. So accordingly, again, we have some, I would say, more fantasy relevant takeaways than usual. And let's kick things off accordingly with our first preseason key takeaway, and that's that Marvin Mims sure seems to have a full-time role going on in Denver. So again, usage over performance, okay? This dude had 1 catch for 3 yards in the entire preseason, not exactly blowing up the box score or anything like that. But when you do look at it, Kendall, I mean, it's Courtland Sutton, it's now Troy Franklin, and Marvin Mims. Of course, Devon Bailey got shipped off to the Saints, just exactly what New Orleans needed, to try to become this Super Bowl contender. So are you buying this, Kendall? Because again, it was a situation where we never quite got to see Marvin Mims get unlocked last year. Great player with limited opportunities, but never cleared even a 50% snap rate until that wild card round. Seems like he's actually going to have a chance, though, based on the preseason usage, to potentially take his game to the next level.
Right. He's been the gadgety player, right, Ian? And that's something that you really don't want to be called. You're like, oh, gadgety Marvin Mims doesn't really equate to like fantasy points necessarily. So it's fun. But there's one of these things where I think if he can evolve, right? If you look at him, if he can expand the route tree, if he can start to evolve and post like really strong efficiency numbers, then sure, we can get in on Marvin Mims. But that's a lot of ifs, Ian. Like that's a lot of things that we have to say, well, if this happens and if this happens, then maybe this breakout will happen for Marvin Mims. And so I'm buying it to a certain extent. Like now I'm going to say, all right, late round flyers on Marvin Mims, I'm totally okay with, which I had already been doing a little bit, between him and Pat Bryant. I think there's always going to be this path for either of them, especially we never want injuries. But if Courtland Sutton were to go down, I don't think he'd come in and just demand everything when we're looking at Marvin Mims, but he would obviously be way more involved. We never want injuries, but that's just how we have to think in fantasy football. So I do think there's something here, but again, it's the gadgety player role that we want to make sure that he sheds, right? That's the one thing that we've seen from him. And so it's like, okay, again, a lot of ifs can go on here. I believe that he has the talent to do it, right? And if he could do any of that, then he would be this breakout. He'd be this late round pick that you say, wow, Marvin Mims has helped me on my fantasy team this season because of where I've been drafting him and because of the fantasy points that he's been giving me. But it's a lot of ifs. So all that to say, I'm buying it to a certain extent. I'm not going out of my way to draft Marvin Mims, but if he falls to me in some of these later rounds, I am way more than comfortable drafting him and Pat Bryant with Devon Vele shipped off now.
The hope is that he's on that kind of Rashid Shaheed career trajectory, because we have seen some of these wide receivers ball out as a returner and accordingly get more touches on offense and make the most of those. Miles Austin actually did this for the Cowboys way back in the day. And again, it is a situation where with Mims, he's been incredible as a returner. It accordingly led to increased usage last year. Actually made my offseason list of the small sample size all-stars because of everything he was able to do on a more limited, you can guess, small sample size. So again, a lot of screens, but at the same time, I mean, you guys watched that Bengals game, one of the better regular season games of last year, Broncos-Bengals, and he caught that freaking 60, 65-yard bomb from Bo Nix. By the way, pretty good example, all you Bo Nix truthers, that you can throw in people's faces when they try to say this dude's a check down artist. And then also had that ridiculous, double coverage contested catch there to help send the game into overtime. So gadgety usage is not bad as long as it doesn't come at the expense of a full-time role. Hopefully we can get both out here, Kendall, but I will say we got some cool stats again from Dwain McFarland, and some of the numbers with obviously Marvin Mims have been a little bit skewed by, I think, some of that screen usage. So if you actually take away these plays that were clearly drawn up in the huddle saying, hey, this is a screen to Marvin Mims, his targets per out run go from 26% to 17%. So again, it's one of these situations where, he really, again, on a per route basis, looks like a complete superstar up there with the top 15 or so wide receivers, but you add that extra, a little bit of ounce of context and things get a little bit more troublesome. So again, Mims, we're excited about him. He's going like wide receiver 55, wide receiver 60. So don't have to exactly break the bank for him. I will say, Kendall, arguably the more underrated winner from this Broncos equation, though, is actually second-year wide receiver Troy Franklin. Was not on the same page with Bo Nix last season. I joked that it was the worst collegiate chemistry we had seen at the NFL level since Mason Rudolph and James Washington. Like, these dudes could not connect on anything until they did in the wild card round. That was a really cool opening touchdown. But wouldn't you think, though, Kendall, just based on what we've seen, Sutton, Mims, Troy Franklin week one, I think we can agree on that. But for my money's worth, I would kind of think that third rounder Pat Bryant maybe has a better chance of taking Mims's job. Seems like Troy Franklin is perhaps the even cheaper late round dart we should be throwing.
Yeah, I don't disagree. This is why I thought that during the offseason that they would go and get more of a veteran, another guy in free agency rather than Evan Ingram. Like, I just thought that because you look at this wide receiver room as a whole and you're like, okay, cool. Courtland Sutton up here who got paid. Congratulations. We love that. We love when guys get paid. And then you look all the way down and you're like, okay, this is fine. Like, and Evan Ingram's good, but we know the history with Sean Payton and some of these tight ends. Like, it's not always going to happen. And so I agree. I think with Vele out of the picture too, for Mims and Franklin now sharing like more slot responsibilities, right, Ian? That's kind of what we expect for both of them. I think there's no reason to not take stabs on these are late round guys. I have the most Pat Bryant. I will say that. I have the most Pat Bryant out of the three of them. But if we're talking Mims, Troy Franklin, who, like you said, just, I don't know, maybe they need to go get breakfast, Ian. Maybe they need to do a book club. Maybe they need to play video games together, whatever Kyler Murray's doing with Marvin Harrison Jr. They need that, because it felt like they just didn't even know each other. But I think because of the price, I'm going to probably end up with the most Pat Bryant out of this whole situation. But late round flyers on Mims and Franklin. I mean, why not?
I'm personally partial to the golf storyline that we have going on with Michael Penix Jr. and Kyle Pitts this offseason. We'll see how that works out. But again, all these guys are late round darts in the first place. I would really hope you're not actually relying on Mims, Franklin, and or Pat Bryant early on in the year. Possible that we do end up getting more of a rotation with these guys. It is just this preseason after all. But again, for Mims in particular, to see him flash high-end ability at the NFL level over the course of 2 years, I do think it is pretty meaningful to potentially see his biggest role yet. Takes us us, though, Kendall, to our second key preseason takeaway, and that is Giants rookie quarterback Jaxson Dart looking really freaking good out there. And look, I'm talking about on field too, because let's face it, the guy's got swagger. All right, he's got the one eye black strip. Like he actually does it because of Anakin Skywalker. Like I just freaking love that. He's got the visor, the arm sleeve. But all that aside, Kendall, I mean, he's going out there and balling. Had the second highest PFF pass grade among 68 qualified quarterbacks this preseason. Number 5 in the EPA per dropback. Also tied for 5th in big time throw rate. Again, really just made a lot of good things happen, and also showed what he can do on the ground with 52 rushing yards and a touchdown. So again, it remains to be seen when he's going to get his chance under center. Brian Daboll's continuing to be pretty adamant this is Russell Wilson's team for the time being. But at a minimum, Kendall, as much as preseason performance doesn't matter, we still like to see players be good versus bad during these glorified exhibitions. And yeah, Jaxson Dart's been really good.
Jaxson Dart's been really good. I said it maybe even a month ago, but when we were on LG TV, I said Jaxson Dart's going to be the waiver wire hero for 2025. And I'm still fully believing in that. I know that Russell Wilson's going to be the guy for this team, but we have to remember too, like when we look at their schedule, they have the hardest strength of schedule going into 2025 out of any team in the NFL. And so you're telling me like, I don't know, Ian, what are we putting the over under at? Because I can go through their first 6 weeks and it is hell on earth. They play the Commanders, they play the Cowboys, the Chargers, the Chiefs, the Saints, the Eagles at home. Then they take on the Broncos and the Eagles again. You're not going to tell me that maybe before week 8, we probably see Jaxson Dart, whether it's because Russell Wilson isn't playing well enough or up to their standards, or because we don't want this to happen, he gets hurt. This is an organization that needs wins. Like they need wins desperately, and they are trying to find it any way they can. So if you've already seen flashes from Jaxson Dart in the preseason, I'm not saying he's going to come in and be the hero and save this entire franchise, but you'd rather give hope to the team and the organization if Russell Wilson isn't working out. I think that he could be someone I can already see it, Ian, and I can see it in the future that we're writing up waiver wire articles for Jaxson Dart because Russell Wilson isn't cutting it. I don't think anyone would be shocked by that at all.
And again, it is that rushing ability that really could make Dart one of these hidden not preseason, but just fantasy gems that you could get on the waiver wire per Dwain McFarland's ceiling floor and just, overall model he's got going on. Best case scenario, we're looking at potentially 23 plus fantasy points per game. Again, in large part, thanks to what he can do on the ground. So we've seen this happen where rookie quarterbacks, even as they are still learning the nuances of real life football, can give us some fantasy goodness just thanks to simply running it a lot. So I'm with you in terms of thinking it's going to be a sooner rather than later thing. With all due respect to Russell Wilson, I mean, hey, that was a gorgeous, beautiful 60-yard bomb he threw to something named Bo Collins here a few short weeks ago, but it is just that schedule. So while I wouldn't be surprised if that defensive line, because my God, this pass rush is going to cause some chaos out there. Look, they could go 2-2. If they knocked off the Commanders and Cowboys to start this season, maybe even the Chargers, who have obviously their own issues going out the line of scrimmage, I think it's going to be ball control oriented, but just the defensive line of Abdul Carter, Kayvon Thibodeau, Brian Burns, and all of these guys taking care of business. But realistically, when they initially released the schedule, this is not Kendall and I hating on the Giants. Vegas only favored the Giants in one single game, guys, and it is week 5 in New Orleans. So I'm thinking the earliest, Kendall, is week 5 against the Saints. They start off, 0-4, 1-3, or something like that. Let's face it, Brian Daboll's hot seat might as well be on fire at the moment. I would like to think the latest is going to be week 7 because their week 6 game against the Eagles, it's home, it's on a Thursday night, so they would have that extra couple of days to get Dart ready. I don't love the first potential start of Jaxson Dart's career coming in Mile High against the Broncos, but you said it, the schedule doesn't exactly get lighter, so rip the Band-Aid off at some point.
Yeah, poor guy. He's going to be seeing ghosts out there. Maybe they do give him Saints just to be like, here you go. It's going to be great. Look at you. Go out there. And that's the only thing, like when I talked with Thor Nystrom and we did all of our shows for, prepping for the NFL draft in the offseason and all of that, the biggest question, one of the bigger questions that we always talked about surrounding Jaxson Dart was that playing in Ole Miss, it incorporates NFL concepts, right? But when we look at Ole Miss as a whole, it is not a program where you say, oh, this absolutely breeds, NFL ready quarterbacks. So we're not saying also when Jaxson Dart goes in there that it's going to be this beautiful, all of a sudden he's going to be this franchise quarterback, because it's probably not going to look very good. But what you said, Ian, is that we look at the rushing upside. And for when we look at guys on the waiver wire, especially like the Sam Darnold's last season, not rushing upside, but Baker Mayfield, those guys that we got off the waiver wire last season, it's one of those things where we want to get them with these guys that could give us the rushing potential. And that would be Jaxson Dart in this situation.
Again, for a while, Anthony Richardson was the just kind of lottery ticket I was willing to throw at the quarterback position very late in drafts. I think Jaxson Dart is a really good argument for now being that guy. Takes us to our preseason takeaway number 3, and that's that Ollie Gordon looks like the clear-cut RB2 in Miami. Avoided the rumors about Brian Robinson potentially, taking his talents, or I guess being sent down to South Beach there. So really at this point, Kendall, I mean, you could not have asked for a more pure August run out for Mr. Ollie Gordon. Yes, he was a 6th-round rookie, but this time last year, after he had that huge 2023 season at Oklahoma State, he was in a lot of people's, back half of the first round, those way too early mocks, and for good reason. Over these past 2 years, we've only seen 3 running backs register a year with 2,000 plus total yards and 20 plus rushing touchdowns at the, FBS level. Ashton Genty, Cam Scatterbo, Kendall's guy, and also, yes, Ollie Gordon. So I know 2024 didn't go quite as well. Gordon doesn't have the same pass down ability as those guys either. But look, Alexander Madison, he's out for the season with a neck injury. Jalen Wright has a leg injury. He's considered week to week. He's not expected to play week 1. Devon Achane is considered day to day with the calf injury. He should be good to go. I'm not, sounding the alarms there. But Kendall, with Madison right out of the picture, Gordon could be RB2. He could be the short yardage guy. And what'd that produce recently? 23 freaking touchdowns for Raheem Mostert in 2023. So it is just a situation where 21 touchdowns, excuse me, but I'm getting excited here. Ollie Gordon really does seem like not only one of these handcuffs, but man, he could have legit week 1 standalone value, at least as a flex.
Yeah, pour a drink out for the Jalen Wright. I was with you. I had Jalen Wright, and it's just one of those things where, like you said, I'm sorry, just pour one out, everyone watching. It's just send thoughts and prayers to Ian. But it's one of those things where it feels like, is it not Ollie Gordon's, RB2 spot for the taking at this point? The vibes, I'll say this, the vibes don't feel great in Miami, to be totally honest. Just off the bat for the season, they don't feel great. Achane, yes, the calf injury, they're saying it's day to day, but we always want to be careful, especially with these running backs with workloads like Achane coming into the season already injured. You have to be careful. Not to say that it's like, don't draft him. We've seen him go down draft boards, Ian, I think for good reason. I was in a draft over the weekend where I was at the 12 spot and I was just like, you know what? I don't want Achane at this turn at all. And so you have to be careful there, but it does feel like Ollie Gordon, so Dwain wrote up, he handled 100% of the starter snaps and all of the rushing work with Wright and Achane sidelines. So he finished the day with 5 attempts, 26 yards. And with the situation with Wright, he's run cold, like you said. Achane, we're hopeful that he's going to be good to go. But to me, when the door is wide open and they have nowhere else to go, we're probably just going to have to follow the arrow and say, you know what, Ollie Gordon is the RB2 in this backfield that we're probably going to want, because Jalen Wright, if everything goes well with Gordon, he's going to take that RB2 role and he's not going to give it back up to Jalen Wright. But I'm curious with you, Ian, like if we did see Achane go down, which knock on wood, we never want to happen, would you think that he would get all of that if Jalen Wright was healthy enough? Or do you not think it would be more of this split backfield where they just say, no one can have this Achane role. No one is Achane in this offense. Do you think it would be more split?
I do think if Jalen Wright was good to go, it would be closer to split. Now, I fully understand, despite having, again, far too much of Mr. and Mrs. Hartitz's bankroll involved in Jalen Wright at this point. I do admit that, again, Ollie Gordon was coming on really strong in the preseason. You really could not look worse than what Jalen Wright did out there. Now, Kendall, I could do that thing where I'm like, oh, no, it's just the injury. How could we have predicted this? But I fully understand. Ollie Gordon coming on strong, not my best call. He was cheap, whatever. Jalen Wright in the past, we have to move on at this point. And again, I'm just kind of looking at it right now as, no, I don't think that Ollie Gordon has that pass down ability of Achane. We could see Miami potentially still be in the market for another one of these running backs, maybe Antonio Gibson, Devin Singletary. There's going to be a few moves between now and week 1 that I do think will surprise us. And I would be surprised if Miami doesn't do something for this backfield. But man, it's just a situation where when we do look at kind of this RB4 tier of running backs, the Braylon Allens, the Austin Ecklers, Trey Benson, Tajay Spears of the world, honestly, a lot of the reasons that made me really like Jalen Wright now also apply to Ollie Gordon, Kendall, because we know Achane's never going to be this 300, 400 carry back. He shouldn't be. He's obviously so great as a receiver. Why would he put that on his plate? So yes, Ollie Gordon, if Achane does happen to miss some time, I think we could actually be looking at 15 to 20 combined opportunities per game. But even if Achane is hopefully good to go in week 1, that's where we can get that kind of flex whip benefits upside. I mean, really, if we're trying to just kind of go through this early down grinder, you can fall into the end zone a lot, even if they're not contributing a ton in the passing game. The model for this is obviously David Montgomery as the overqualified RB2 in Detroit. I'm thinking Jordan Mason can be a cheaper version, but if we want to go down to like Walmart version of David Montgomery, it might be Ollie Gordon. And Kendall, I like Walmart. I'm cool with Walmart. I'm cool with Ollie Gordon.
Heck yeah, we're cool with Walmart. Who doesn't want a deal? And that's the thing that gets important is like, if you are not willing, and it's okay, you have really expensive handcuffs or guys that maybe were saying are handcuffs, but really could have standalone value, like the Jordan Masons of the world. I don't call him a handcuff anymore. That's a 1A, 1B situation. I think the situation with Kenneth Walker, I get nervous with him. And it's not because he had 6 games last season where he was out. It's just one of these things where maybe they look at that workload and say to themselves, well, we need a little bit Zach Charbonnet to make sure that Kenneth Walker doesn't get injured. So if you're not willing, if you don't want to spend up on some of those guys, which I'm not saying you shouldn't because I love drafting those guys, but the cheaper options, Ian, the guys that you get later in drafts, like an Ollie Gordon, those are guys that if they hit, they change your fantasy outlook. They take you to championships. It's a Kyron Williams situation all over again. Not to say that that's who he is, but that's why we take flyers on late round running backs more of the time than we do at wide receivers, right? Because the way that they climb up those depth charts is a lot easier than the, fifth receiver down, the Isaac Teslas, who we love, but it's like, okay, how is he going to get playing time? So looking at an Ollie Gordon and saying to yourself, okay, I want to invest in this backfield. He's not someone that you're going to put in ever unless an injury happens, really. Or like you said, if he really has this RB2 role and they say, hey, we're going to give him more of that work, that's where you look at it. But it's a patience thing. You have to be patient with these guys in this backfield. We want to take shots, and it's one that you probably should with Ollie Gordon.
So I've gotten some questions already about this. Would you still rather be rostering Wright or Gordon? It's Gordon at this point, all right? New information. Yeah. We got to go ahead and change those priors and go with it. And honestly, think if you do have one of those more pure handcuffs to Trey Benson, Tyler Algiers of the world, if your roster is just stacked and you're trying to just make sure you have the Falcons RB1 and you're not going to be worried about flexing someone like Ollie Gordon anyway, I get it. But man, if you did go with more of these zero or hero RB builds, guys, Ollie Gordon is someone you want on that roster right now. If we had to sit here and try to predict who's going to be on the cover of week 2 waiver wire articles, I would say Ollie Gordon. Then also Dylan Sampson for the Browns. Pretty good shot of being those guys. So again, guys, plenty more preseason takeaways to get to. Time for some utilization report goodness. Time for the utilization report presented by the fine folks over at DraftKings. Kind of, we buried the lead a little bit here because let's face it, the one true RB1 in the hearts of Americans, Bill Croskey-Merritt, doing this thing with Washington. Jacory in your programs, Bill in your hearts, of course. So look, it's a situation where we can kind of look at the entire view of the preseason and say, look at this freaking rise here. I mean, this is a guy now where I think Dwain has him as a borderline RB2. I'm a little bit cooler. I have him more so in that Tyrone Tracy mid-tier RB3 range, but that's a heck of a lot higher than being outside the top 200 like he was, again, just a few short weeks ago. So on the one hand, we can also look at the preseason usage here where, guess what? He had the best usage possible. Didn't play potentially because he was resting with the starters, although he's also been dealing with a lingering shoulder injury. So I'm not quite willing to go out on that much of a limb, Kendall, and say he's just completely in a different stratosphere than Chris Rodriguez, who should be, involved as well. But that said, they already weighed Rodriguez twice last year alone. Austin Eckler at this point in his career isn't going to be this 200 carry guy. It sure seems like all that animosity and just everything that led to Brian Robinson leaving Washington in the first place was due to Bill Croskey-Merritt. And accordingly, I do think that makes him a priority target and one of our top sleepers over at fantasylife.com.
Yeah, I think consensus, we have him RB33 now, which, like you said, is a crazy jump from, you were talking about him, Ian. We have to give you flowers, but it was just like other people were not talking about Jacory Croskey-Merritt. So it's one of those things where, like you said, we have opinions before the season and even just coming into, this week. And we have to look back and say, all right, well, now this is going to be, it feels like a full-fledged takeover for Jacory Croskey-Merritt. He looks like he's going to be the RB1 in Washington, right? You still have Eckler there. I think there's questions. We don't know for sure if it's this 3-way committee with Eckler, Jacory Croskey-Merritt, Bill, if I may. may, Bill or Chris Rodriguez. So it's one of those things where or a takeover scenario, or if it's just Bill's season and it's just they're not going to go back. I do believe, though, like any coaching staff where they look and they say, we're comfortable enough keeping Jacory Croskey-Merritt on this team and letting go of Brian Robinson Jr., they obviously see things and know things and have plans for him that we have to consider. So for me, I am open to now. I mean, I've been open to drafting Jacory Croskey-Merritt. I'm going to be honest, Ian, he's gotten so expensive, though, where I might just be priced out of him. I mean, he's been going so early in some of my drafts where I understand people buying the hype and stuff, but at that point, I just say, if I miss out on Croskey-Merritt, then I say to myself, well, I'll just have to, handcuff it. Chris Rodriguez would be the guy. And it's not as fun. It's not as sexy. It's not as cool, but there are other ways to get into this backfield. But yeah, I'm buying in on the Jacory Croskey-Merritt hype. Bill.
Had the week 2, Bill, the running back guy. He had that touchdown against the Bengals in preseason week 2. Couldn't have asked for a bigger hole, but that's not fun, Kendall. And again, fantasy is about fun. So if you want to go ahead and get yourself some Bill, go ahead. Just please wait until like the end of round 8 or round 9. Hopefully, Dwain and I were doing this real-time sports draft where, my God, he went at the end of round 5. So running backs do fly off the board a bit more often in that league. But to me, that is a little bit of a reach because, again, Austin Ekeler could still lead the way just enough of taking those fantasy-friendly pass-down, targets. And then also, he knows a thing or two about scoring at the goal line. So I do think there's an unfortunate potential for Jacory Croskey-Merritt to be more so that in between the 20s early down grinder, which isn't great because we're not getting those touchdowns where they go to Ekeler or Chris Rodriguez, and he's probably not going to be the most involved guy in the pass game either. So again, great story. We love us some Bill, but again, I think the current hype may be a little bit too much. But if you're on your waiver wire, by all means, go get the man. Also, Kendall, we have some slight breaking news here on the Fantasy Live show. Amari Cooper has a new home. He has joined the Las Vegas Raiders. Obviously comes right after Jacoby Myers' trade request, so a little bit interesting there. Cooper was having a very, very rough season with the Browns. Looked like he might start to get going after he was traded to the Bills. Things did not go pretty after that, though. Again, flashed a timer there, scored a couple of touchdowns, but never quite gave them what they were looking for. I remember our own Matthew Berry, actually in one of his best columns, I think he does every year, kind of the most interesting things he learned at the combine. It seemed like the common sentiment was that the best years of Cooper's career were firmly in the rearview mirror. So all that said, 2023, not too long ago, he certainly put together a good season there and came on strong down the stretch with Joe Flacco. But personally, Kendall, other than a late round dart, Amari Cooper, probably not someone I'm going out of my way for in the year 2025.
No, sorry, Amari Cooper, but congrats that you're on a team. We love that for you. Give me Dante Thornton or anyone else, Jack Besh. I don't know. Sorry, but congrats. We love that.
Draft Brock Bowers. But again, congrats. Go ahead and get that extra cheddar. So again, we'll see what happens. If anything, Deontay Thornton, Jack Besh, some of these auxiliary guys, I'd be a little bit more worried there, but I'd be very surprised again if Amari Cooper is going to be taking too many meaningful opportunities away from the big 3 in Vegas. Obviously, Bowers, Myers, and yes, even Ashton Genty. So with that said, K-Dog, let's get back to our regularly scheduled programming. And that is that Tyler Warren is a stud every down tight end. That last part kind of is the key here because in Indianapolis over the years, we have seen Shane Steichen be very willing to rotate multiple guys to the position. Not so the case when they decided to use a top 15 pick on the Penn State Stars. So with Daniel Jones under center, it is one of those things where, as we saw in the last preseason game, going to be missing him at deep, from time to time, but also just an offense with the amount of RPOs they run. And honestly, just kind of the need for a true yak beast like Warren underneath. It just seems like a situation, Kendall, where we could look up in week 8 or week 9 and go, oh yeah, Tyler Warren leading the position in targets right now. So I know Dwain McFarland is a huge fan. He has actually called Tyler Warren basically this year's version of Jaden Daniels, which I know might make zero sense to some of you, but basically what Dwain's trying to say here is he can be the skeleton key, if you will, that late round option that, again, you can get in round probably 9 or 10 in more drafts than not and legit have a chance to be looking at a top 5 tight end. Do you agree with the optimism from Mr. Dwain Kendall?
Yeah, I totally do. I've been really actually comfortable taking Tyler Warren and, to be honest, Colston Loveland as my first tight ends, and then making sure if you're doing that, getting a second tight end. I think you need to be doing that if you're getting these guys just in case it doesn't work. But, the Daniel Jones news for this team, while again, not sexy and not fun, it does have a better completion percentage than Anthony Richardson. I think we could say that with Tyler Warren. And I think, people might look at this offense and say, well, there's low passing volume. There's, it's a little bit crowded when we look at the receivers. But I think, again, when we look at draft capital and where they took Tyler Warren, they've had these tight ends in the past and they've rotated, right? But it's been blocking tight ends, it's been pass catchers. It hasn't been a Tyler Warren, I think, is what I'm trying to say here. So for me, I have been way more than comfortable. And if I'm wrong, I'm wrong, but you're not spending this expensive pick on him, Ian, where you're like, oh, this is going to kill my teams. Like you're just not. He's not going in the first 5-6 rounds of fantasy drafts. So to me, when I look at it, I just think that, with what we've seen in the past from the Colts, they need someone that's going to be a game changer and that can help them win games. And that's why they went out and drafted Tyler Warren in the first place. So I like what I saw, during their preseason games, even though we didn't see that much of him during preseason as well. It also feels like one of those situations to me, Ian, where I look at this and he's not Brock Bowers. But remember last season we had the conversations of Brock Bowers is in a really bad environment. We don't like the quarterback situation and it's just overall gross. You kind of just have to try and look past it, squint a little bit and say, but Tyler Warren, like who he is as a player and the talent and the athleticism that he has, it's like it's got to overcome all of that.
There's also some low-key potential for him to get a bit of a wildcat role. I mean, he was lethal running the football at Penn State, and not that Daniel Jones can't run. We must remember Saquon Barkley dubbed the man Vanilla Vic once upon a time. But again, compared to Anthony Richardson, certainly would make more sense if Tyler Warren is used a little bit more around the goal line relative to what he would be, again, if Richardson was under center. So good stuff on Tyler Warren. Again, goes hand in hand with our overall draft strategy here at Fantasy Life. First or last mindset at tight end. Once you get to the Tyler Warrens of the world, though, most of the running backs and wide receivers we're interested in are already off the board anyway. Last one for this section, Kendall. Want to talk about Blake Corum, looking a lot like the Rams RB2. Even got to rest with the starters here during the final week of the preseason. So it's not exactly as cemented as we've seen maybe in past years in terms of trying to figure out who Sean McVay's handcuff is going to be. We were seeing a bit more split usage with Jarquez Hunter during the first couple of weeks. But again, Kendall, the best usage we can get in preseason is no usage at all because the guy is actively going out there. And again, it was consistent starter treatment during the first 2 weeks, followed by that rest alongside Kyren Williams. So again, I'm not going to go ahead and sit here and say Blake Corum is now in the, Zach Charbonnet tier of top tier handcuffs. But I know, Kendall, when you're writing these waiver wire articles for us every Sunday night into Monday, God forbid something happens to Kyren Williams, you're going to be putting a lot of ink to the paper about Mr. Blake Corum.
Yeah, and it's like you said, we thought we had breadcrumbs early on, but this last week of preseason really usually shows us what the expectations are. Like I think Dwain, today on SiriusXM called it the dress rehearsal for a lot of these teams. And so with Blake Corum especially, you just want to get the right, Ian, we're just trying to be out here and get the right handcuff. And so from what they've showed us, it really does feel like it's Corum, and where you're getting him in some of these drafts, free. If you've already drafted, he's probably on waivers for a lot of you, but he's going like pick 128 on Yahoo, undrafted on CBS, pick 202 on Sleeper, which basically means he's also not getting drafted. You've got 170 on ESPN. So again, we want to try with these backfields. You're going to draft Blake Corum and you're going to see him sitting there, and he could be a cut candidate for you because you just say, hey, injuries happen. We're going to get injuries the first week of the season. It is inevitable. It sucks. But, with him and with his price, you just keep him. And like you said, if something happens to anyone on this team, we never want injuries, but if something were to happen, he would step up into this role. So that's why you just kind of have to take a look at him.
Again, Sean McVay, at least with Kyren Williams, was willing to leave this guy on the field, one single running back, 90% plus snaps, more than any other offense in the NFL. So when you start reading some of those, again, post-draft quotes about actually Blake Corum last year, talked about, again, how similar they are as players and what they could potentially be together. So I know, again, every rookie is fun too, and not saying Jarquez Hunter won't be involved a bit, but right now, Blake Corum certainly the front runner for that. And with that, guys, this is going to wrap up our utilization report presented by DraftKings. I want to remind you guys to download DraftKings Sportsbook, sign up with the promo code FantasyLife, and bet just $5 to get $200 in bonus bets instantly. That's promo code FantasyLife only at DraftKings Sportsbook. Let's make this college football season one to remember. Also, just a little bit more news, not going to spend a bunch of time on it, but Trey Hendrickson holdout is over, finally got his bag from the Bengals. Hilarious, Kendall, that teams, again, waited this long to do something that felt inevitable all along, but good for the Bengals. Now their defense goes from arguably the worst in the league to just a little bit above that. So good for Cincy. We look forward to continuing to target their players and whoever is facing them on any given Sunday. But again, guys, we're breaking down the top 10 preseason takeaways here on the Fantasy Life show. Going to move in a little bit quicker here, but Kendall, Harold Fannin, someone where, again, just set all kinds of records at Bowling Green, putting up bonkers numbers as a tight end. Seems like he is going to be starting for the Browns. He actually was getting, rumored to be having that treatment in practice. And then we went ahead and saw it in week 3 of the preseason with Joe Flacco. So David Njoku is still tight end 1, but basically the Browns seemingly decided that Jamari Thrash is not going to be their starting slot. They could be leaning a bit more into these 2 tight end formations with Harold Fannin Jr. So no, Kendall, I don't think we can be relying on Fannin as this early season fantasy star or anything like that. But Njoku's time in Cleveland could be up after this year. At a minimum, what we're seeing right now is pretty good signs here for Fannin's long-term future in Cleveland.
Yeah, dynasty, 1,000%. I think we talked about this in the offseason too, where it's like, again, the draft pick, we didn't have very great like rookie landing spots this season. And it was one of those things where at the beginning of the year, we said, okay, we're going to have to wait on some of these guys. But, lo and behold, things start to change. And so I think with Harold Fannin, especially, like Dwain put it out in the article that you guys should all go and read at fantasylife.com, 100% free. But he had a 60% route rate before David Njoku left the field in week 3. So my thing with Fannin is that, again, dynasty, that's one of those guys that you want to pay attention to. Best ball, when you don't have to figure out when to start him every single week, that's going to be another thing. Other than that, like a good tight end 3, like that's one of my things. I'm not going to take him in any redraft formats, and I just haven't seen him go. But again, someone that you just want to be paying attention to if David Njoku were to get banged up at all, if the quarterback, they're carrying 4 quarterbacks into the season, and if one of them's good, then they decide to like start targeting Harold Fannin Jr. Maybe that's the other part. But yeah, I think more dynasty, more best ball. This is probably good for you to pay attention to. Redraft, you'll probably get him on waivers if you need to.
Last point here, 9 of his 17 snaps on offense have actually come in line. Good news for his potential to, again, be a true full 3-down NFL tight end. I thought he might be restricted to more of a big slot role. So good stuff for Fannin looking to the future, and good stuff for Lions rookie wide receiver Kendall. Isaac Tesla scored another touchdown in the preseason and had a smooth worm celebration out there. We're bringing back the worm in the year 2025. I love to see it. This is someone who, again, we've been talking up a little bit throughout the preseason. I know our own Thor Nice show has been all about Isaac Tesla dating back to, I believe it was the Senior Bowl. But yeah, there's a lot to like here, Kendall, at least in terms of the long-term upside. So I would assume that, again, trading at least in part 3 third-round picks to go ahead and get this guy in the first place. Tim Patrick's days, unfortunately, as the starting number 3 receiver in Detroit, probably over. But that said, still got Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jameson Williams, Sam Laporta, maybe even Jahmyr Gibbs projected for more targets than this guy. But Kendall, we're talking about an elite athletic specimen who certainly seems to be pretty good at football. Again, that's not too bad for a long-term outlook on a guy, particularly with Jameson Williams' future murky. So Isaac Tesla, again, very later rounds of your draft, someone you can throw a dart at, but more than anything, just potentially a real nice gift for the Lions for the long term.
Yeah, exactly. We know, again, I will always say this. We know who the targets are gonna go to, right? You said it. Jahmyr Gibbs, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jameson Williams, Sam Laporta. We know those guys all out of the gate are going to get what they deserve. But if there was ever an injury, Ian, when we talk about late round flyers, I said earlier in the show, like, hey, make sure you're paying attention to running backs because it's easier for them to climb up depth charts. But with guys like Isaac Tesla, who has shown in the preseason throughout this, rookie last couple of months that he can hold it down. He's got the athleticism. He's got the traits. He obviously shows that he can handle a role at the next level potentially. Yes, it's only preseason. Don't roll your eyes, but he has kind of shown that. So for a guy like that, it makes it a little bit different. I've loved taking him I took him over in Vegas over the weekend, my last round pick in a 20-round draft. I was like, you know what? Why not? Because at that point, really, it is like a why not situation. If one of those guys were to go down, obviously he wouldn't just jump into this huge role, but it does show, like you said, with the draft capital and everything else that he's shown over the last couple of months, he could be good. Why not? And he does the worm. So we have to obviously buy in.
Buy into the worm. If there's one thing you guys take away from the Fantasy Live show, it is to always buy into the worm. We've been talking a lot of why nots at the end of the draft. This next one, though, guys, is a legit sleeper who I am trying to target in far more drafts than not. And that is Broncos starting RB, J.K. Dobbins. It sure seems like that is the case. Again, good preseason usage throughout. R.J. Harvey getting some run as well. No, we don't expect Harvey to be going anywhere necessarily, but Broncos beat reporter Benjamin Albright is on the record saying that Dobbins is a starting running back right now. In our own fearless leader Matthew Berry is in agreement that this does make Dobbins a very good later round pick. So there's been a lot of talk, Kendall, on the social media webs about the pass pro argument here and, giving praise to Dobbins, not so much to RJ Harvey. And on the one hand, it matters because, coaches like Sean Payton, any NFL coach for that matter, want their running backs to be able to protect the quarterback. That's kind of a big deal for any player that's going to be having a big time role on offense. On the other hand, those pure pass pro snaps on 3rd and 16 or whatever tend to not be very valuable in fantasy land because those aren't the sort of situations where quarterbacks are looking to check the ball down at all. So look, I'm not going to make this anti-RJ Harvey argument. I still think he's very much in play, full PPR, especially as a low-end RB2. But Kendall, when I see Dobbins still out there as this, mid-tier RB3, this is a situation where I think people are going to be surprised at his week 1 role. And man, if there was ever a guy that we know can enable multiple RBs in the same offense, it's Sean Payton.
I hate it, Ian. I'm going to be totally honest. I hate it. I just don't do this to us, Sean Payton. Look at us in our eyes. Don't go the Arthur Smith route. Please just give us fantasy goodness with RJ. That's all I'm asking for RJ Harvey. Like my RJ Harvey shares will scream, Ian, if this happens. But it does feel like, unfortunately, it's one of those things at the beginning of the season where I could see J.K. Dobbins, yes, it could be a split role. But do you think he's going to keep that throughout the whole season? 1, he's going to stay healthy. 2, he's going to be good enough. Like that's my thoughts with him. He had a great run out with the Chargers last season, right? And it was good. It was like, oh, okay, this is nice for him. But I'm not letting I'm not letting J.K. Dobbins stand in the way of me drafting RJ Harvey. I just can't do it. Like I'd rather have the younger guy that's going to come in that felt like a really big Sean Payton pick than say I would rather draft J.K. Dobbins. I just haven't done it. And it could burn me, but that's fine. It's fine.
I hear you, but Kendall, what I'm trying to say is RJ Harvey or J.K. Dobbins, yes, you can draft them both. I think they're both going at good prices. And again, it is the sort of high-scoring offense without a ton of wide receivers that we can exactly totally believe in, with the exception of Cortland Sutton, where I could see both running backs having pretty big-time roles. Maybe a similar argument with our last key takeaway from the preseason. Braylon Allen coming on strong as the Jets RB2, Kendall. Now, this is a situation where, look, in Denver, we have a coach in Sean Payton we trust. We have Bo Nix. We also have an offense that just ranked 10th in scoring. Not the same level of certainty going on with Justin Fields in the Jets offense that isn't exactly expected to light up the scoreboard. But that said, Breece Hall could be looking at a bit more of a committee. For me, Kendall, the whole Braylon Allen talk, it's just made me a little bit more pessimistic about Breece Hall himself. I'm still not buying too much into Braylon Allen, but I could be wrong. What say you?
Yeah, Braylon Allen's interesting because it's been one of those things of, okay, if it's going to be this committee, then you're not like Braylon Allen then isn't a handcuff. Like, should we not be talking about Braylon Allen as a handcuff? Is it going to be a 1A, 1B situation? And there's a lot of Breece Hall haters out there. I will say that. I am not one of them. I have been open to drafting him. I think once he got to his, current price a couple of months ago, we were saying like, maybe this is a bit too much. So I'm good with drafting Braylon Allen. I'm still looking at him more as a handcuff than anything else. If he has standalone value or ends up having standalone value, perfect, because where you're getting him in drafts, again, you're not paying the Zach Charbonnet price. But I'm curious, Ian. I still don't. Do you have an answer for this backfield? I really don't. Like they've told us for months, like months ago, even they said, Aaron Glenn came out and said, well, we're going to get all running backs involved and it's going to be, this 3-headed monster, I think was the words that they said, which we hate for us for fantasy football. So it hasn't moved like that though. Braylon Allen has stayed cheap the whole offseason, even with those ideas floating around. So I'm curious what you think here, because if we get into the season in 2025 and it's just the Breece Hall show, would we be shocked about it? Or, I don't know.
At this point, I'd be surprised. I do think Breece could still wind up getting around 15 combined carries and targets per week, which isn't bad. But again, when we have Isaiah Davis laying out there to also take away some of these targets in the pass down situations, and now Braylon Allen mixing in at the goal line, again, only so many touchdowns to go around in New York. We had that stat 2 years ago where Breece only had, I think, 1 carry inside the 5-yard line all season long. So if there ever was a back where we really did need that 3-down workhorse role, it does seemingly belong in New York. But we will see what happens. Guys, don't leave just yet. We still do have some preseason week 3 takeaways we want to sprint through here at the end. First, though, a word to our friends over at Paramount Plus. As we know in fantasy football land, you can't count on much these days, but you can always count on Sundays with the NFL on CBS and Paramount Plus. That's right, football fans. Watch your local NFL game live every Sunday on CBS and Paramount Plus all season long. This year's schedule is absolutely stacked with rivalries and revenge games, including the next chapter of the epic Bills-Chiefs saga. So stay connected to it all on any device, at home or on the go. Visit ParamountPlus.com/NFL to get started today and count on Sundays for another must-see season of the NFL on CBS and Paramount Plus. Again, guys, we invite you to check out Dwain McFarland's lovely and free article at fantasylife.com breaking down all the week 3 preseason usage nuggets to know before you guys get into your final fantasy draft or just to get ready for week 1, because it really is a great piece. Kendall, I'm going to run through about 10 of these, though, and then throw to you for what you think is the most important, okay? So first of all, in New Orleans, Kendre Miller really has cemented himself as the RB2 behind Alvin Kamara. Good, very late-round handcuff option. Juwan Johnson, near full-time role as a New Orleans Saints tight end. Loves seeing that. It's been kind of elusive for him throughout his entire career. Malik Washington for the Miami Dolphins right now, looking like the wide receiver 3, potentially going to take away some of those the short ADOT targets that we saw going to Jonnu Smith last year. Brian Robinson, the RB2 per Kyle Shanahan in San Francisco. So maybe that Undertaker meme getting some handcuff value behind CMC, you could imagine. In Chicago, we have DeAndre Swift getting a near every down role. Obviously, injuries going on the Roshan and Kyle Monungai make it tough to be too optimistic, but had a cool hurdle last week as well. DeAndre Swift, I know, has some dead zone qualities, but for zero RB drafters, you could do worse than him in the middle rounds of your draft. Also note Roma Dunze and Colston Loveland seemingly racking up the most targets in this new Ben Johnson version of the Bears. Chiefs committee backfield, perhaps we did see Isaiah Pacheco continuing to get starter treatment. That said, Kareem Hunt and to a lesser extent Rashard Smith staying involved as well, so keep an eye on that. Similar sentiment in Pittsburgh. We do have Jalen Warren working as a starter for now, but Caleb Johnson going to get some run. And yes, Arthur Smith is going to Arthur Smith with Kenneth Gainwell being involved as well. In Indianapolis, DJ Giddens looking like the clear RB2. That said, the Tyler Goodson elbow injury isn't apparently that serious. So again, late capital LATE round handcuff potential for Giddens, but wouldn't go too far out of my way. The guy I would go out of my way for is Dylan Sampson in Cleveland, guys. He actually was getting starter reps ahead of Jerome Ford in preseason week 3. To remind you guys, for about the 100th time this offseason, Quinshon Judkins still not signed to a team. And finally, Deontay Thornton for the Raiders got a full-time role, although Amari Cooper is back for this reunion tour. So we'll see if that continues to persist. So Kendall, for my money's worth, I would say that Dylan Sampson potential to be the Browns starting running back from week 1 is the biggest little tidbit here. What say you?
Yeah, I would agree with that one. And it's one of those things where, again, Quinshon Judkins is not signed to a team. Like when we talked with a Browns reporter from The Athletic a couple weeks ago on SiriusXM, and he didn't even expect, if Quinshon Judkins were to come back, it wasn't going to be like, oh, we'll see him in September kind of thing. It was going to be a month or 2 months down the road. So be careful if you're drafting Quinshon Judkins. I think that's my takeaway. And then Ian, Arthur Smith hates our fantasy teams. There's nothing else to say. I just cry, go into a closet, drink. I don't know what you want to do, but if you've drafted like Jalen Warren, Kenneth Gainwell, Caleb Johnson, what are we doing, Ian? Why can't we just have a Jalen Warren season and let it go? Come on. He hates us. I think that's my biggest takeaway. He absolutely hates us.
Do not have nice things. Arthur Smith hates fantasy footballers, a tale as old as time. Great call in the conversation, though, with Zach Jackson. I invite you guys to follow him at Akron Jackson for all your Browns beat reporter needs. But otherwise, guys, just have a great rest of your day. We appreciate you for tuning in, as always. Like, subscribe, leave a review on iTunes. That is always really helpful, and we would appreciate that. So for K-Dog, for producer Matt, for producer Kelsey, I'm Ian. Thanks again for tuning into the Fantasy Life Show. And until next time, take care, everybody.